subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
The Prime Minister Narendra Modi-led government marks the first year of its third term and 11 years today on June 9th. And we're doing a national security SWOT analysis with our Editor-in-Chief, Nitin Gokhale. Do send in your questions, comments, opinions. We'll try and break it down into various segments, but you're most welcome to send us any kind of queries that you have. Nitin, it's been 11 years. I know it's a very vast topic, but the most recent and what everyone is talking about, of course, is Op Sindoor. So this new doctrine, the pros and cons of it, when you're saying you'll hit harder, you'll hit not at the proxies, you'll hit at the source of terrorism, and that nuclear blackmail will not be tolerated anymore. The pros and cons.
Well, the pros are that it should have dissuaded Pakistan and Pakistani army from carrying out, or asking the terrorist groups to carry out any attacks, at least for the next 4 or 5 years. But you never know with irrational players. And I'm not trying to do on the one hand and on the other kind of a thing. But the fact is, India has signaled its intention. Many people have commented that it can backfire because now you have given the initiative to the terrorist groups and Pakistani army that they can launch an attack and then expect you to do the same thing or even higher in terms of punitive action. But how long can you go on taking blows from your adversary without hitting out? Was the logic in doing Operation Sindoor, and therefore the punitive action against the terrorist groups, terrorist headquarters on the first day, on 7th May, to hit at their headquarters and sort of instill some kind of a fear and draw a new red line that we can go and hit you anywhere in Pakistan. It's not something that is beyond us. So be careful or be aware. That was the intention, that was the objective behind it. But when Pakistan retaliated and tried to hit Adhampur base and military targets in India, India also sort of retaliated very heavily. And the results of for all of us to see, where the 9 air bases were almost rendered dysfunctional for a while. Airfields can always get back to functioning because if runways are damaged. But I think the psychological damage inflicted both on the terrorist groups and the Pakistani army is more impactful than the physical damage that has happened. So I think that's the pros. The cons, as I said, the initiative is perhaps partly lies with the terrorist groups or the Pakistani army. It can trap India into a kind of spiral of violence, which India as a rising economy, as a developing country, and one of the rising powers, middle and higher power, cannot afford, should not afford. So that's one kind of negative, if I can say that. But risk-taking is something that Prime Minister Modi has demonstrated. And I think sometimes you don't need to go by what has happened in the past and what may happen in the future. You have to live in the present. And I think so far so good. Although we could have liked, India would have liked more open and unequivocal support from many of the traditional partners, traditional so-called allies. But that hasn't happened. But that's the downside you have to live with. As you rise, more and more people will try and pull you down. They will not tolerate your progress, your rise. And therefore, India should be aware of this. And I think that's the con. But if you're aware, then that doesn't remain a con. I mean, I would think it that way.
Just the last point, if you want to just flesh that out in terms of no unequivocal support, that would, there is complete support when it comes to terrorism, right? So, and this is not a new lesson that we are learning all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But what do we take away from this fact that there's no unequivocal support to, say, Operation Sindoor or parts of it?
Parts of it, I think, on the first day when India hit back, hit the terrorist targets or terrorist headquarters, till then and before that, between Pahalgam massacre and Operation Sindoor being launched, there was the support across the international players, bigger players, smaller players, that yes, you have the right, you reserve the right to hit back at the terrorist, at the root of the terrorism emanating from Pakistan. But when this sort of escalated into a bit of a military exchange and military targets of each other being hit, then the world sort of becomes wary. Uh, not not because of prolonged war that they fear, but because of the nuclear factor that Pakistan has been able to instill in the minds of nuclear fear, in the minds of the Western powers, especially the United States and others, where they think the threshold for Pakistan using nuclear weapons or threatening the use of nuclear weapons has come down. And India should be aware of this and should not become an aggressor. I think that's where I think the distinction is there. As far as countering terrorism, hitting terrorists, they're absolutely fine because they have also suffered. But when it comes to an India-Pakistan matchup or an India-Pakistan conflict in the military terms, then they become wary and they sort of withdraw or don't openly or unequivocally support India's stand.
As far as Pakistan is concerned, and pre-Pahalgam and Operation Sindoor, Pakistan was nowhere on most people's radar in India. But one country that has been on every average Indian's radar, at least for 5 years, if not more than that, is China, which is considered the primary threat. So in the last 11 years and the progress that we have made, you want to give an overview of where we stand now, especially when we have started engaging China again?
Again, yeah. That's a very good question to look at because China, in my view, should remain India's primary adversary. India should not take its eyes off the China competition, China challenge, because in my view, Pakistan is the subset of the China challenge. The two-front challenge is already here. Two-front war may not be here, but two-front challenge is already here. And remember, Pakistan's 80% of its military arsenal hardware comes from China. It will get further hardened and supplied by China. So we have to be aware of this, and therefore we cannot take our eyes off China. We cannot deter China from giving any equipment or platforms to Pakistan at all. But what we can do is to have a modus vivendi or a mechanism to engage China more constructively, more, I would say, more creatively, so that it remains a competitor and not a contestant or a adversary in bigger terms, in terms of military, in terms of undermining India all over. If you look back to from when Prime Minister Modi started, when he took office, in fact, they started on a very positive note, both sides. In fact, President Xi Jinping came to India in September 2014. But there also one got to know and one got to see how Xi Jinping or the PLA were doing a two-track approach. On one hand, they were talking about doing $20 billion of investment in India by a certain date. But at the same time, the Chinese intruded into Ladakh and Chumur, and there was a standoff followed by Prime Minister's visit to China. Again, very well received, very well given a red carpet treatment, talked about shared destiny, all those things happened. But by 2017, again, Dolam or Doklam happened. And there, India and China again were at loggerheads on a border issue, which involves Bhutan, the third country. Again, after that, there were two informal summits, one at Wuhan and the other at Mamlapuram, where it seemed that now they've arrived at a consensus to leave aside these differences on the boundary and face-offs on the border. But that didn't happen. That was belied in the summer of 2020. We are actually coming up with the anniversary of the Galwan clash less than a week away. And next Sunday will be the 5th anniversary of the Galwan clash, which killed for the first time after 1973, I think, or 75, killed soldiers in an action. Although it was not a classic bullet for bullet action, it was more fisticuffs and more primitive weapons being used. But Galwan is an inflection point. And for 5 years, almost 4.5 years, nothing seemed to work between India and China. If you when you look back between summer of 2020 to uh, Kazan in October 2024, there was intense round of negotiations. Both sides stuck to their stand. India actually got the better of the Chinese in terms of negotiations. New mechanisms were established in terms of negotiations. And there was a mismatch initially, but the Chinese probably realized because of changing geopolitical equation, their own economic situation, and India's firm stand that we will not delink the boundary issue from the rest of the relationship as they wanted it. Chinese always want this. Let's keep the boundary dispute to the future generations to be solved. Let's look at other aspects of the relationship. But here, India was very firm, and I think it's borne fruit for India's benefit or advantage, because in Kazan this was done. Then the all the withdrawals from all the friction points happened, and now we are in a phase where next steps are being taken. The Mansarovar Yatra is beginning on the 15th, in fact, which is ironical because that's the time when Galwan happened 5 years ago. So we are at a uneasy India China are at an uneasy um, peace, looking forward to more constructive engagement, more fruitful engagement, more commercial engagement. But at the back of both their minds, they know that this is a relationship which has to be managed, worked upon, and one slip up here and there can again set the relationship back. I think India is also aware, and one very good thing, my last point on this has happened is that the Indian citizens, Indian population has now realized that China is the real competitor, not Pakistan. Over obsession with Pakistan has vanished. The scales have fallen from the eyes of the decision makers, the businesses. Businesses, I'm not too sure. I think I should amend that because they're always looking for cheaper imports and raw material and all that. But there has been a conscious attempt to move away from China's dependency, but that hasn't been reflected in the trade figures, although. So it's a very complex problem. I mean, China is what Churchill had described it as a riddle, or had described Russia as a thing behind the bamboo curtain. I think China is also like that even today, despite all the progress, all the economic activities that take place. So India has a major challenge at hand. Pakistan is, I think, just a distraction.
Just a distraction, and just a reminder to our viewers that we're doing a national security analysis of the 11 years that Narendra Modi-led government has been in power. And you can send in your questions, your comments, your opinions, and we'll get our editor-in-chief, Nitin Gokhale, to answer them. We're trying to break them up into different segments in terms of defense, international relations or foreign policy, internal security, economy, and technology. But do keep your questions and comments as free as you would like to. Just building up on, it's multi-pronged, you can't really put them in silos, like I said, defense, international relations. But since you're talking about China and the border, the infrastructure development that has taken place, and we've documented so much in Arunachal Pradesh, in Ladakh, done a little bit in Andaman Nicobar Command, which is different as well. And the recent extraordinary engineering marvel, the Chenab Bridge, these dual-use infrastructure developments along the border villages, etc. The whole policy, if you want to just look at the evolution of that.
Oh, indeed. So you will remember, I mean, you've traveled a number of times to Ladakh, but post the Galwan clash, when I wanted to travel to Ladakh, I actually chose to travel on the third axis, which was just beginning to open, the Rohtang or Manali, Darcha, Padam, Nimu axis, which was a marvel in itself. And Sinkunla tunnel is likely to come up in the next 3 or 4 years. Now, that's where I say that India's approach to infrastructure building has really got a boost post the standoff in Ladakh, because till then it was business as usual, doing it at its own pace. But what would have been done in 10 years, perhaps at that pace, has got squeezed into a 5-year timeline, and several roads, bridges, tunnels, habitats, vibrant villages have come up, a special program for villages along the LAC, line of actual control. All that happened because India got spurred into action because of the standoff and the now very clear and present danger from China on the line of action, actual control, not just in Ladakh but across. So improvement in Arunachal Pradesh, which is also what we have documented a couple of times in detail. Also Sikkim, the middle sector in Uttarakhand, everyone's getting attention. More and more money is being given to Border Roads Organization. Time-bound projects are being launched and completed. So that's only as far as the northern borders are concerned. Even Andaman Nicobar island group of islands, which are our kind of strategic launch pad for Act East policy. It used to be an outpost. I always say it. Andaman Nicobar commands and Andaman Nicobar Islands have now transforming itself, are now transforming themselves from being strategic outpost to a launch pad for Act East policy. So I think all this has resulted because of China's aggressive
Movement in
actions.
Lakshadweep as well. in terms of-
Lakshadweep also, which again will have its consequences and advantages in the Arabian Sea and Indian Ocean down there. But yeah, this has happened because China's aggression was manifesting itself along the and aggression in very clear terms or very visible terms. Earlier, China used to play this dual, have a dual approach where they would profess friendship and say, our destinies are together, two Asian powers can rise together. It's an Asian century, all that. But now, even if they say as lip service, India is seen through the game and therefore is doing multiple things on the infrastructure front. But that's only on the northern border and Andaman. Look at the infrastructure within the country, which is also dual use. You have number of railway lines. You mentioned Chenab Bridge. Now, for the first time, you've got the valley, Kashmir Valley, connected to rest of the country. You also therefore have now an alternate means of transport into the valley and from there on to Ladakh if necessary, because earlier it was only the road connection from Jammu to Ladakh. There was no railway line. So at least in the railway line is now moved forward, deployed forward. And this on the other side, there's the other strategic railway line likely to come up in on the northern border or feeding the northern border, both in Arunachal as well as in Ladakh. So that will get spurred in the next 10 years. We'll see further progress, I would think. So this has been a trigger, which is a good thing for India.
In terms of foreign policy, India undoubtedly grown in stature, both because of its many muscularities, whether it's economy, defense, technology, that it's manifested over the last few years. But in foreign policy, when you look at another strategic partner of China, in fact, Russia, and how important Russia has been to India, and before that, the Soviet Union, how there was a lot of misunderstanding and anger in even looking down on India or berating India for the relationship that we had, especially after Russia reinvaded Ukraine. But we've forcefully given our message across. Has that gone? Have they understood it? I mean, what I'm talking about is the West and the US
West.
and Western Europe.
Well,
basically.
they don't. I think you saw. I think
when
one
it
of
comes
the
to petroleum.
yeah, exactly.
There.
No, India did its own policy and implemented its own policy with Russia. It realized that this is a war between the Western powers and Russia, and it need not have taken sides in that struggle or that contest, and it chose to not condemn Russia, while still telling Ukraine that you must also look for solutions because violence is not a solution. Prime Minister Modi went and said it's not an era of war, I think, to President Putin a couple of times, and then to even Zelensky. Also, he sent a message that they must negotiate. Although it hasn't gone anywhere, India is not a mediator. India has never been a mediator.
It's still that unique position when
unique
you can
position,
talk to,
yeah. So
absolutely
both
opposing,
sides,
in this case warring,
yeah.
But it's mirrored across the globe. In
it is now, yeah, exactly. And in fact, people were surprised that India took that stand, and also the fact that India actually saved the world from inflationary pressure because India bought Russian oil and then that oil helped stabilize the crude oil prices, which India has done a great favor to the Western to the world, actually, not just to the Western countries, which has probably been recognized everywhere in all capitals, but they don't say it openly because it's difficult to accept that a third world country, which was a third world country for a long time, is now doing a favor to the Western countries and stabilizing the economy, the global economy. Probably not acceptable to many people, but that's a fact. That in these 3.5 years since February 2022, India sourced much of its oil from Russia. Although that equation or that ratio has changed now apparently again, but in the meantime, everyone else is doing that. And I think Russia and India go back a long way. Although there are wrinkles once in a while, Russia sometimes talks about supporting Pakistan or says things that India doesn't like. But Russians can say the same thing about India. So when there is a relationship, there will always be this some kind of a dissonance which creeps in once in a while. But I think it remains India's steadfast friend and partner compared to any other country in the world.
Our neighborhood policy, first policy. One is, if you want to comment on the fact that all these all-party delegations that went everywhere, there weren't any that went to the neighborhood. I mean, of course, not Pakistan or China, but any of the other neighbors. And if you want to look at the ups and downs that we have gone through with almost every neighbor, and how we've learned to deal with that and come out for the better for both sides.
Sure. I think I'll take the second one first, the ups and downs with the neighbors. If you look at the journey from 2014-15, so if I remember correctly, 2014 Prime Minister Modi's first overseas visit was to Bhutan, then to Nepal, and then he went wherever he had to go. So, and he invited, don't forget, he invited the South Asian or Indian subcontinental neighbors and more for his swearing-in ceremony on the first and the second function. So that was a professed and declared policy, which in principle hasn't changed or in implementation hasn't changed. But the response from the neighbors have been varied, or responses have been varied. Also, the situation in the neighborhood has also undergone a lot of changes, a lot of ups and downs, like you mentioned. So let's take one by one. If you look at how things have panned out, Nepal, great bonhomie on the first visit, but it immediately went down southwards because of India's perceived blockade when their constitution was being rewritten. So Nepal has flip-flopped. In Nepal says India has flip-flopped, but Nepal has flip-flopped. It's tried to use the China card against India in many ways, and all of them are now adept in doing that. Sri Lanka was also similar issue, but India stepped up unreservedly in helping Sri Lanka during its worst financial crisis or economic crisis. So that relationship is stable at the moment. Bangladesh, India had a great run for 15 years with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, but right now there is obviously a tension. There is also lots of hot words being exchanged, not by the government really from Indian side, but Indian influencers, Indian commentators have been quite harsh on Bangladesh, and Bangladeshi social media, as well as some of the Bangladeshi government's actions, have been hostile to India. At least we can perceive that as hostile, because again China comes in there. All of these neighbors use China card against India, but that's a destiny a bigger country in a region always faces, and that's their destiny. Every nation's destiny, which is bigger than other neighbors, because they fear the bigger neighbor. They also resent the bigger neighbor. So that's what has happened with Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Maldives. You know Maldives better than I do. 2013 to 18, Maldives was perceived as a Chinese colony almost under President Yamin. Then from 18 to 23, India managed to get back a pro-India government in President Soli. But again in 2023, the government which came in, or the new prime minister, president who was elected in Maldives, was absolutely declaratory, hostile to India, and India Out campaign was launched during his campaign in Maldives. But again, see, the geography is the destiny. So Maldives has now again sort of reached out, come back to. I won't. India also doesn't like this term. It's come back to India's fold. India wants a relationship which is based on multiple benefits to each other. And I think Maldives has realized, so it has come back to India. It is. I think the Prime Minister is likely to go to Maldives again, is what they're saying. So it's been up and down. So one comment I want to make about the strategic relationship, or relationship in the neighborhood, is always this: that strategic affairs is a game which has no clear victory point or a defeat marker. It is a continuous game. You win some, you lose some, you make comebacks, you make sort of take some of the setbacks in your stride, and then go back again. So diplomacy is all about making the impossible possible. And in some cases, you fail, you wait for the right moment. So I'm hoping that same thing will happen with Bangladesh. There will be some, once the elections take place, there will be some changes. But if you look at the larger neighborhood, yes, India has this problem, or the immediate neighborhood. Your first question was about
The all-party
all-party
delegations.
delegations not going to the neighborhood. I think the same thing applies, the same principle, that all party delegations need not have gone to the neighborhood, because they would have already been told by appropriate people. And I think the all party delegations went to places which seemed hostile, or which seemed disinterested in India's stand in counterterrorism or otherwise, and therefore they were chosen and sent there. You can call it an oversight, you can call it judgment of error of judgment, if you really look at it harshly, not sending him to neighborhood. And the neighbors may not take it kindly also going forward. So I'm still not firm on what should one make of that lapse, if you want to call it. But yes, you're right. They didn't go to the neighborhood, but I think the MEA and the government may point out and say that they did go to the West Asian countries, which is considered now by India as a neighborhood. And I think it was best described by author and thinker M.J. Akbar, that India today defines its neighborhood not by geography but by reach. And therefore, I think it's a mixed signal as far as immediate neighborhood is concerned: Nepal and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, where they didn't send any delegation, but they went to West Asian countries.
Sure. We can probably come back to foreign policy, since there's so much to talk about there. But if you want to look at the defense sector, in the last 11 years, a standout reform or something that has been pushed through has been, of course, the CDS's appointment and subsequent movement towards theaterization. Where are we now? How important was that? And where do we go from here now?
Well, CDS appointment or CDS proposal has been pending since post Kargil in 2001, when the group of ministers accepted the proposal of the Kargil Review Committee. Under that, the Andaman Nicobar Command was formed, as you know, and then Strategic Forces Command, Tri Services Command were formed. But that was half done reform. So CDS appointment in January 2020 was a breakthrough moment, but more than that, it was a breakthrough plus moment, because the government went ahead and created Department of Military Affairs too, which was not expected by the military. So the CDS is concurrently wearing three hats. He is the Chief of Defence Staff. He is the Secretary of the Department of Military Affairs, like a financial, I mean, like with financial powers and otherwise, like other secretaries in the government of India. And he is also the chairman, permanent chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee of the three services, with three chiefs, and he being the chairman. This was unexpected. This DMA, or big reform plus. The other reform, so theaterization. we had a setback that the first CDS passed away, got killed in that accident, General Bipin Rawat, and then General Anil Chauhan was appointed 9 months after his demise. So it's been a slow journey now from 2022, October 2022 to now, coming up to September 2025, when he completes 3 years of his tenure. He's worked his way up, unlike General Rawat, who was working his way down. He was pushing in reforms from top-down approach. General Chauhan has pushed up the reforms from bottom up by getting jointness instilled, the integration of various aspects of training, various aspects of operations, all that. And it was quite evident that the three services and three services and the CDS were working very closely together. Obviously, there'll always be differences. There'll always be um different approaches to operations and effectiveness of operations and how to apply kinetic force. But at least he's sort of ironed out what used to be very open and very hostile uh, interaction or hostile reactions to theaterization. It has to happen. From what I can see, it's the Prime Minister's decision, it's the cabinet. So CS has approved that decision for the eventual theaterization. So one cannot go back on that. What shape and size it takes remains to be seen. So hopefully, with Sindoor, Operation Sindoor is one of the trigger points, like Galwan was for infrastructure building and rebalancing of the military, especially the army. Something similar will happen because of Operation Sindoor, because the positives of Operation Sindoor are the synergy, the coherence, the synergy between civil, politico-military aims and objectives and implementation. And within the services, the cohesion that was shown or integration that was shown. So I think we are on track as far as theaterization is concerned.
Again, within these 11 years, if you want to look at the short, medium, and long-term goals that India should set itself in terms of its defense infrastructure, now talking about platforms, you have Atmanirbhar Bharat, and you're moving towards that on various fronts and dimensions. You still need defense partnerships with global partners, and you need possibly foreign platforms as well. So how do you make decisions, especially in the light of what's happened now, and you have to make them really quickly?
So, Make in India is a given. Make in India is cast in stone. It cannot go away. It's been 10 years since Prime Minister announced it in Bangalore at the Aero Show in February 2015. It cannot be reversed either. But it needs some tweaking. In the sense, some of the products and promises of delivery by some of the new players in the Indian defense market have not lived up to the expectations that they had built. So they had delivered, but efficiency was say 60%, 70%, where you require nearly 100% efficiency or guarantee of performance. That hasn't happened. So that needs to be corrected going forward as far as Indian MSME and other sectors are concerned. The bigger players have to put in more money for research and development, private players I'm talking about, and also look at building scale. Without scale, you cannot compete in the global market because there's only one customer in India and the rest has to come from outside. So exports have done better than ever before, but we'll come to that. Now, the Indian public sector undertakings in defense, very old, very pampered, very, I would think, blue-eyed boys of the defense ministry are in a transition phase. Those who have been, so the OFB was corporatized, that is the Ordnance Factory Board was corporatized, different entities were created from one big entity of 42 or 41 ordnance factories, and 7 of them were created. Some of them have done well in the competitive market that they have entered, perforce, by compulsion. Some others are not doing too well. So those who are not doing too well perhaps need to be either wound up or merged into other verticals. So that competition brings in more efficiency is proven by what the verticals which are doing well under the OFB corporatization scheme have done. Similarly, DRDO has to step up and not be an obstacle, but a facilitator for creating new technologies, new products, platforms. And the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers from the world over, will have to also get used to the fact that whatever they do with India, Indian Armed Forces, they have to have a facility in India or a joint venture in India. Also, do maximum technology transfer so that an ecosystem is created. India is not then dependent on others. But nobody gives technology that easily. They all hold on to it very much. So HAL or Tejas, light combat aircraft Tejas, or our shipbuilding yards, or our the base repair depots of the Air Force, the advanced base workshops of the Indian Army, all of them will have to look at innovative ways to make sure that the inventory that they already have does well, is well oiled and ready for combat deployment. And going forward, look at the products which can be either co-manufactured, co-produced in India, or if you're importing without, I mean, when there's no choice, then make sure that I won't call it reverse engineering, but make sure you master it and see what you can do going forward. So lots of challenges there, but I think again Op Sindoor has been a wake up call. Some of the systems did extremely well. Akash, the Barak 8 surface to air missile. You had Akash Tir, which is coordinating the air defense systems across the spectrum. You had the BrahMos missile, for instance, but the biggest success, although it is again joint venture between Russia and India. But I was told that the ratio of Russian parts, I mean Indian parts to Russian parts, has changed from what used to be. The Russians used to do 85% of the components and sub-components and assemblies in the BrahMos missile. India was only contributing 15%, say 10 or 15 years ago. Today, that ratio is reversed in India's favor at 85-15. I was told by somebody, which means it's a huge leap from how it started and where it's going. So there's lots of potential. Everyone, users, planners, industry, the finance guys, and the government at the political level have to see to it that defense does not lag behind because of cumbersome rules, long gestation periods, long procurement process. And in that respect, I think there is a lot of buzz that the science and technology verticals or ministries and departments have been exempted from buying everything on the government e-marketplace, and some of the GFR, the general financial rules, have been relaxed in for them to buy advanced scientific equipment, because you don't get three competitors to supply advanced scientific machinery or platforms. So something similar, can it be done for defense, is the question that people are asking, because very often there is only one manufacturer or a designer with IP, own IP in India, and that product is also unique to one service. Where do you get 1, 2, 3 or L1, L2, L3, lowest one, lowest two, lowest three? You don't get. So this attitude of the old times where you need competitors or you have to perforce bring in contractors so that you show that there is a fair competition has to go somewhere. Some exceptions have to be made if India has to become uh, an indigenously driven defense powerhouse in drones, in radars, in surveillance, in munitions. So, I mean, you name it, and everything India should be try and be self-sufficient. Wherever there is no option, of course, you should import. So I think that's going to be the tweaking that is going to happen from all the meetings and all the discussions that are taking place in the Ministry of Defense with users, with the industry, is what one really can assess at the moment.
In the defense sector, how would you rate it in terms of evolving emerging technologies? And again, another trigger factor would be Operation Sindoor, and we saw how they were integrated, not only that they were emerging technologies that had been used.
Yes, certainly. So I think that's where the industry as well as the armed forces should see the positive side of what happened in Operation Sindoor, where you had apparently for the first time, I am told, some of the Indian OEMs on site with their teams to correct, to tweak, to support whatever maintenance support was required immediately, which is again such a huge mindset change. Earlier, when the military would say this is secret, don't come here, we can't take you, we'll bring it to you, something of that kind. But I'm told that this time, one of the lessons or one of the positive things out of Operation Sindoor is that you had some of the OEM representatives on the base immediately providing solutions and updates or upgrades to the platforms, which again is a very, very positive journey towards self-reliance or Atmanirbharta.
I want to shift a little bit to internal security, and one of the biggest successes that has come to the forefront is, of course, left-wing extremism or Naxalism. With the dimension that you're also not just looking at the symptom, you're looking at the source of the problem. Development is another prong that is also being used.
Oh, very much so. In fact, I just this afternoon I had an occasion to listen to the DG CRPF GP Singh, who's come off the one of the biggest operations in that area, left-wing extremism affected area, and he was giving the lowdown on how this was done. So there's a lot of change in tactics, change in approach. It's now what the MHA has done. They have declared that by 31st March 2026, this country will be free of Naxal violence and Naxal organizations. The DG CRPF was saying we'll see how this goes. But I mean, of course, they are hopeful of doing it because of the successes and the well thought out, planned operations and approach that has taken place in central India. I mean, three different states: Telangana, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, partly Maharashtra, where from 124 or 126 districts, which used to be severely affected by Naxalism or the CPI Maoist presence and their violence, it has come down to something like 14 districts or maybe 6 districts. I think it's 6 districts. So four in Chhattisgarh, one in Jharkhand, one in Maharashtra. It's a huge change in 15 years, mostly in last 10 years, because of concerted attack. Now, what they have done? They have sent and deployed troops or paramilitary and police troops in forward areas where there's nothing existing, no government presence, no security. So the Naxals had a free run in that area. There's something called the KG Hills in Chhattisgarh, which they surrounded and demolished their heart of their operations of the left-wing extremists or CPI Maoists and killed one of their most wanted leaders. So they've gone after the leadership. One, two, they've gone further than ever before. And those centers now, the FOBs, some 227 forward operating bases, have become also the centers for governance. So where people are now getting their Aadhaar cards made, Ayushman cards made, they've been given rations, schools are being opened. Most importantly, mobile connectivity has reached those areas. And that's where I think it's going to make a big change because mobile is a weapon which just takes away the will to go and join an underground organization when you have no certainty of life, and that will bring not just mobiles but all these other issues that I've spoken about, hardened police stations for instance, which means they used to earlier loot police stations very easily. Today, it's not possible because they've now got ring fenced the police stations, got more security forces presence. And once the security forces have established their presence, the other arms of the government are going there and interacting with the tribals and doing things. So finally, one point there is that I had this in my, one of the doubts I had, that what about the ideologues, the supporters, as some people like to describe them as urban Naxals, who actually sustain their publicity, their narrative, all that, what happens to that? But if you take out the weapons and hardware from the cannon fodder, which is the foot soldier in the Naxalite movement or the left-wing extremism movement, then these ideologues also have no leg to stand on, or they don't have anything to fight for, or at least profess to fight for. They will switch their allegiance and their causes and get into something else. They will probably switch over to the government. This one is observed in the Northeast. When you take away the hardware, the guns and the weapons and explosives, then that ability to extract money, do ransom, do other stuff just goes away. So I think this is a big success, inflection point as far as internal security is concerned. But internal security is not only about Naxalism. There is also this constant battle, which I think NSA Ajit Doval had said couple of years ago in the National Police Academy, about civil society being the next front of battle. And what he meant was that the minds are being manipulated, the minds are being, coming under the influence of foreign powers, inimical powers, and even before kinetic operations begin anywhere else, the society then gets targeted, and that's called now a new term over the past 4 or 5 years called cognitive warfare, which is here and now, and it is continuous. The Operation Sindoor fighting may have stopped, or striking may have stopped from Indian side, but the cognitive warfare is constant. So the Chinese will try and undermine the society, and they'll influence the younger minds. India, remember, has 65% of its population is below 35. So it's vulnerable, it is manipulative, the kind of information that comes in. So that's another battlefront, which again has been joined. But how successful one is, it will only, the proof of the pudding will be in eating.
You talked about the Northeast, and when you talk about internal security, we've seen what's been happening in Manipur. Now, deadly clashes, a lot of time has gone since they're still simmering.
Sure.
So, is that one area, how would you assess that being dealt with by
That's
the
one
Modi
of the
government?
downsides of internal security not being successful there, because Northeast, otherwise, with the exception of Manipur, had really turned around in terms of infrastructure development, building infrastructure in the Northeast, connectivity, all that had improved. Manipur is a very peculiar case, and if you look at the history of Manipur over the past 30, 40 years, every 15, 20 years, this eruption of interethnic rivalries, violence, ransom, kidnapping, and mindless violence in many cases just erupts because of the close proximity in which various tribes and ethnic groups live in Manipur. It's also got that peculiar history of 70% of the land being occupied by 30% of the population, and vice versa. So the Imphal Valley feels has perceived and real discrimination that they feel. The other tribals feel that they have been neglected, and then every time some trigger, some kind of incident just triggers a violent response. So I certainly, one would like the government to be more proactive, assertive, take action against those who are perpetuating and creating lots of violence. I think we are right now in the second phase or a third phase of that violence. Hopefully, like the 1992, 1995 Kuki Naga clashes which had taken place, and then this sort of petered out. Something similar will happen in this case, but yes, that's a downside.
Well, something that really is not the downside is the economy. When you look at, we all know the numbers and how we are moving up in whether it's global rankings, the fastest growing economy, etc. You want to look at that over the last 11 years, coupled with what you refer to, which was the democratic dividend, which means like there has to be meaningful job creation as well, apart from just GDP growth.
Sure.
And what I think is one of things that has been bothering you for a long time, you've talked about it, which is internal migration and the connection
Yes.
between the economy.
So, because rural economies have not really created the kind of jobs that one needs, and the number of jobs that you need, there's a lot of migration taking place to our cities and urban spaces. Now, that's, I won't call it a threat, but it's a big challenge because our cities are not coping. I mean, you look at any city, one shower, one big rain, and they just come to a grinding halt. Traffic gridlocks have happening everywhere. You saw the stampede in Bengaluru, the IPL winners going home, and the kind of thing. So one of the things for it, the one of the reasons for all these kind of challenges there is one, of course, quality of jobs, and the issue is not about whether government is providing the jobs or not. It's the changing economy. It's the gig economy. It is the IT sector is now no longer the holy grail that you look at, because you've got pressure from the US internationally, globally. It's become much more competitive and uncertain because of the Trump tariff madness that is there. So how do you, sort of look at giving more jobs to such a large number of youth who are aspirants of a better life? That's one challenge that the country has. Migration will become a challenge if not tackled right now, or at least if those people are not given the kind of facilities or comfort that they need to earn livelihoods and stay safely and comfortably in cities. So that needs urban governance, needs much more attention from the government. Economy, I don't understand much about the economy, but if everyone's telling us that India is the fastest growing large economy in the world, it's the fourth largest or the fifth largest, depending on how you see it, GDP or purchasing power parity and all that. I think India has done well. It has navigated through the COVID madness. It has had a mixed success in handling COVID wave one, wave two. But for such a vast country, these problems will always be there. I mean, they're not easy to solve, not easy to tackle. And on top of all that, unlike China, when people say, oh, look at the way China handles its large population, there's a fundamental difference. India is a democracy. It's a chaotic, it's a noisy, it's a demanding democracy in many ways, that people are aware of their rights, but many of them are not aware of their responsibilities or do not want to know about their responsibilities. And therefore, we are here where we are. But I think the future looks not just secure, but just on an upswing, really, for India.
Upswing space, if you want to talk about, and especially the last 11 years. Setback recently for ISRO, but overall, we've seen what they're doing. We're going to have a second astronaut in space in a few days as well. And we had an ASAT test. If you want to just encapsulate what's happened.
So
in the last
space is
7 years.
certainly one of the areas. Actually, I would put it like this in a larger context. Technology has been given much more attention than before. Not just the existing technology, the current technologies in space, in information technology, communication, 5G, 6G. 5G has been, sort of 5GI has also happened, where Indian system has been created. You look at the way technology has been infused into governance in terms of digital digital public infrastructure. Technology has played a huge part, and I think this government is very clear that the way forward is technology. They're also looking at future technologies, so quantum computing, hypersonics in missiles. They're looking at biotechnology as one of the key areas where which will create health, is on the radar for being one of the areas of focus of the government, where again technology has been infused. Space, like you said, astronaut, second astronaut going there. Chandrayaan project is on. ASAT, India is probably the fifth or the sixth country to have an ability to shoot down a satellite in space with your own developed
Docking, undocking.
undocking of the satellites,
Gaganyaan coming up.
Gaganyaan, and also military satellites being launched. Your own GPS system, which is now getting developed and probably implemented, rolled out. Navik is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, and also the way uh, technology is being used for benefit of the common people in terms of digital infrastructure, like I mentioned, in terms of reaching out, communication, uh, remote sensing, remote medicine, telemedicine, all that. So I think science and technology has been one of the key areas of success.
And in fact, lots of parts of the world want to learn from us in these sectors,
course.
digital.
Oh, yes.
Where it's immediately helping the common man. so to
And
speak.
the kind of corruption or leakage of funds
Yeah.
has been curbed because of digital
direct
infrastructure.
transfer as well.
Direct benefit transfer.
So, Nitin, again, then if you want to just give an overview of the last 11 years, what you see as the direction that we're moving in and where we'll go in definitely in the next 4 years because of this government being in charge and in the future.
Sure. So it can't be 100% successful. No government in a democratic country like India can be 100% successful. Can't be termed like that. The very fact that Prime Minister Modi has managed to secure the third term, even if with a bit diminished majority, itself is a big success for the government's programs and schemes and implementation. I think one of the key areas of success has been the scale and the implementation at that scale. I think that's his hallmark, Prime Minister Modi's hallmark, that he believes in large-scale projects, large-scale schemes, and then implement them very successfully. I think that's the key to success of the government. The downside, like I said, you too much concentration sometimes on domestic issues, which then feeds into foreign policy. So now probably one is feeling you're alone in the world because of others not supporting you. But the others always point out that you never supported us when we wanted. You never took sides. India is not willing to. So it's non-alignment in a different form. Now it's multi-alignment, where you choose the side when you want to. Non-alignment was about not choosing side. So that has got a mixed results. Actually, 90% I would think is success. 10% because of the attitude, then the governments or the countries get back at you and say, okay, you didn't help us that time. Why should we help you now? So that, again, inevitable. One must expect that defense can be much more stronger. Can be Agniveer was one of the things that has been experimented with. Too early to judge because the first batch has to go out and then that batch has to get integrated in the larger society. So overall, let me say this. If I have to rate the government on a scale of 1 to 10, I would, in 11 years, not the last 1 year, I would give this government average 11 years about 7 marks out of 10. You might ask, I mean, there will be quibble about it, but I think it's a fair assessment for an outsider, sort of objectively looking at it, with the reality also known to me, how complex it is to govern a country like India. I would think it's 7 out of 10.
On that note, thanks, Nitin. Is one of our viewers, G. Sridharan, who's also thanking you for this analysis. So do stay tuned to Strat News Global for the latest analysis like this, the deep interviews that we do, deep dives into various topics, our documentaries that are on Strat News Global. We have a separate YouTube channel which gives you daily news worldwide if you want to get much shorter clips which are not analysis or opinion based on, they're just news facts. You can go to that YouTube channel, and of course all the latest both from the global arena on Stat News Global's website and Bharat Shakti on the defense ecosystem. Thanks for watching. You've been watching Stat News Global. I'm Amitabh P.